Hi, I'm Brian from Reason Test Prep, and this is the third in our series of videos on how to study for the SAT or ACT. And in this video, we're going to talk about the importance of time management. So first thing is, okay, why does time management matter so much on the SAT and ACT? So a couple things. First is the time constraints are pretty tight on both tests. They've actually gotten more generous over time. And so it's not quite as bad as it used to be, but a lot of people struggle on one or more than one section of the SAT or ACT. So it's just a reality of the test. And the other thing is that you might ask, well, why is that the case? Like, why don't they just make the timing much more generous? Again, they kind of have actually, so they've responded to that criticism. But they are partly testing. These tests are partly testing effective time management, right? I mean, in college, part of what you need to do is decide what to prioritize and what to try to get done and what you are not going to get done. I mean, depending on what school you go to, often the work that you have to do is almost more than you could possibly do. So it's a reality of life and a reality of college, and so like it or not, that's I think part of why it's a factor on these tests. Now, okay, second thing, great. So it's important. How do you work on effective time management then for the SAT and ACT? So let me kind of briefly mention the two headings here, the two buckets to be thinking about, and then I'll go into detail on them. So the first is to learn how to attack questions more effectively, individual questions. And then secondly, learn the art of global or section time management, meaning not just how you're, approaching individual questions, but how you're choosing which questions to spend time on and not spend time on over the course of a whole section. So let me backtrack to the first point. So learning how to attack questions more effectively. So this doesn't mean just being faster. This might seem, contradictory or counterintuitive, but just telling someone to just be faster is not very effective, right? I mean, think about like reading. I'm personally I'm a good reader, but I'm not a super fast reader. If you tell me to just try to pick up my reading pace, I'm going to go from, 100% comprehension down to, 30% comprehension if I'm going too fast. And same thing on a math question, right? I mean, if it takes you 2.5 minutes to do a math question, telling someone to do it in 2 minutes is clearly not very helpful. So, what we're talking about here is learning how to approach these things more effectively. So like on a math question, for example, what that means is, okay, the question could be done in this particular way, but is there a separate way to do it that would be much faster, right? And so this is something you want to practice on individual questions. It's hard to do this if you're taking a whole math section of a test. You really want to sit there and do one question at a time and really try to address how you could be going about that question in a more effective, more kind of streamlined way. And sometimes that's about being more strategic. It might be that, you're just doing algebra, but there's a much more clever way to approach the question, maybe using numbers or being visual or something like that. This doesn't, it probably sounds like it would apply most to math, but it applies also to science questions on the ACT or reading questions on the SAT or ACT, because and again, it's best to practice this not on full sections or full tests, but really sit there and do, one science passage after another and really play with your timing. So for example, you might be reading the passage first and then answering the questions. Maybe you want to try reading the questions first and then going right, not reading the questions first, but going right to the questions and answering them and, referring back to the passage without first reading the passage. And on reading comprehension, maybe, you're taking notes as you read, but maybe you want to try not doing that. So, it's best to do this, like I said, either on individual questions or individual passages outside of the context of a full test, so that you can really experiment with different ways of approaching questions, different ways of reading passages, etc., to figure out how you could be more effective and therefore faster. This, if you haven't seen our previous video on kind of breaking this up into two phases, the whole studying process into two phases, this is kind of, something that's more of like a phase one type thing where, you can really practice this on individual questions. And then, once you've done that, you feel a little bit better about how you're, doing on an individual question basis. Then, a totally separate skill set really is how, again, learning the art of global or section time management. So learning how to make good decisions about what to spend your time on as you're going through a section. So, this is best addressed by doing full sections or even parts of sections. So for example, on ACT math, the questions go in order of difficulty, generally speaking. So, rather than sitting there and doing an entire section, you could take the last 15 questions and be like, all right, let me set a timer and see if I can get through these last 15 questions in X minutes, whatever that might be. And part of what you're practicing there is choosing to kind of let go of questions and be like, okay, this question feels too hard. Let me skip it. And it's also something that you can do like repetitively, right? So let's say you're having trouble with the ACT science section or the reading section. You can do section after section. This probably doesn't sound that appealing to a 16-year-old, but yeah, I mean, you could do multiple sections one after another and really address it head on, right? So again, if you do a full test, you're doing one reading section or one science section. Maybe better than doing a full test would be to do 3 reading sections in a row or 3 science sections in a row if that's what you're having trouble with on timing. So really like drilling the weak area as it pertains to timing. The other thing that's important here on global or section time management is just you have to have the right mentality. So if you're thinking that you have to get every question right and that you will get every question right and you should just do every question in the order in which they come, like that needs to change. I mean, first of all, you're likely not going to get every question right, and it's important to just accept that because it takes the pressure off, and then it also helps you make better decisions about how to spend your time. So you see a question and it's clearly something that you're going to struggle with, you don't exactly know how to approach it, or let's say it's a reading question and you're just stuck between multiple answers, or you don't even know where to find that in the passage, like just skip it, right? Skip it and come back. I mean, that's the thing, is that not only should you understand that there might be questions that are just hard for you and that you might get wrong, but you can go back to questions. So it's really foolish to sit there and spend undue time on something that either you're not likely to get right or that you could just come back to later anyway. So you really have to kind of set the mindset in advance so that when you do these practice sections and practice tests, you have the right mentality to begin with. Okay, that's it. I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please feel free to subscribe. And if you know of anyone else who you think might find it helpful, please feel free to share it with them. Thanks again for watching.